Well, here we are tinkering on our workbench again with text layers. Previously, we created the dynamic text box, a single text layer that had this cool text box around it that you could animate. It didn't require monospace fonts, masks, or custom shape layers. And here we are again with this text layer. Now we're doing this cool text animation. You can see it kind of slides in from above without any masks or any additional layers. Like all text tinkering, it comes with a little bit of bugs. You can't really rotate the thing, but you know what? It has some cool features that we get to explore as well, and it makes it easy to drop this onto text layers when you're trying to be efficient with how you're working. So let's jump right on in with how to create this cool text slider transition in After Effects. So here we are in a brand new After Effects project. I'm going to create a new composition, 1920 by 1080, 10 seconds long. Clicking in there, we're going to create our text with our text tool, and we're going to call it Media Workbench, or whatever text you want to use. We'll click on our effects controls. We're going to grab a bunch of effects, drop them in. Some will change the settings of, others will write the expressions of at the end. And I'm going to drag them from the effects and presets panel, but you can always select them from the menu as well. So starting off, we'll go to the channel drop down and we're going to grab the set channels effect. Dropping it in there, we'll go to source layer 4, set alpha to source 4s and change it to full. Next, we'll grab not one but two calculations, and the first one we're going to change the input channel to alpha. Next, we'll grab a CC composite, drop it in between the two calculations effects, and we're going to go to composite original, change it to stencil alpha. Next, we're going to toggle that channel again, go down to generate, and we're going to go to generate fill, and we're going to drop it between the first calculations and the CC composite, like so. And somehow I've made the Netflix logo. Now we're going to toggle that, go to distort, scroll ourselves down until we get to the transform tool. And we're going to grab the first transform, drop it in between the fill and CC composite, like so. And we'll grab a second transform, drop it all the way to the bottom underneath the second calculations. Now we're going to go to the expressions controls drop down now, and we're going to drag ourselves in a slider control. We're going to hit enter on this and rename it to transition. And we're also going to right click the actual slider property, click on edit value so we can set the min and max on the slider, and say we want to go from -1 to 1. So if we toggle down that drop down, you can see we've got those limitations on the sides there. Next, we'll grab a point control, drop it directly underneath. We're going to hit enter and call this swish to, and this is going to control whereabouts our text is going to animate in from. Finally, we're going to go and grab a color control, drop it in there. We're going to rename that to text color, like so. So now we've got all our effects in here. We're going to start connecting them up. So we'll go to the fill effect, find it up the top, go to the color property, and holding Alt, we're going to click on the stopwatch to bring up the expressions window. So now what we're going to do is in fact clear all that and use the pick whip next to it in order to connect that to the text color property. So clicking on that, you can see it snaps its sort of text in there, and then from there we can now change our color property by changing the text color effect, like so. So that's the text color all sorted. Now we're going to go to the second transform and set the two options here. On the anchor point, we're going to hold Alt, click on the stopwatch. It's going to give us the same panel, and again we're going to use this pick whip to go and drag it up until we get to the position property of our first transform, like so. We'll drop it in, and then on the property for the position on our second transform, we're going to click Alt, click on the stopwatch, and we're going to do square bracket width /2, height /2 square bracket. And you can see this is going to grab the width and height of our composition, divide them both by 2, so our position is always in the very center point of our composition. So you can grab this entire effects chain, apply it to a text layer in a completely different composition, different size, and it will all work fine and dandy. So next we're going to go to the first transform effect. We're going to go to the property for position, holding Alt, click on the stopwatch, and we're going to write in our first of two major expressions in here. And we'll try to explain what we're doing. So we're firstly going to type the word var to define a new variable. That variable is called swish, and we're going to say that variable swish is equal to the following. Firstly, swish sounds an awful lot like what we call that point effect, and that's because we're now going to reference it. So it is in there like so. So we've used the pick whip to grab that, and we're going to say our swish value is equal to that minus the following: toComp parentheses transform dot anchor point time. And this is going to grab our point effect, and it's going to minus the very center of our layer anchor point, so where the middle position of it is. So we're just getting the variation of this point based on how far away it is from the actual anchor point of this layer. So we're just getting the difference of it. Now we're going to write our second layer now. We're going to say value. So this is actually going to define the actual value of this transform position property. And we're going to say the value of that is equal to the value that it already has plus, and now we're going to do square brackets because this has two values. You can see it has a X value and a Y value. So we need to give it an array, which is done by square brackets, to be able to say this is a value that we're applying in one direction and then in the other. So we're going to say the plus square bracket swish, square bracket 0, because our swish value is referring to our point, which is also two values. So it has two values that we access using the square brackets and 0 and 1. So we're going to say swish square bracket 0 square bracket, and then we're going to say multiplied by parentheses 0 minus our transition value. By using the pick whip, we can grab that. And then we'll close that bracket off like so. We'll hit comma, and we're going to grab that entire thing like so, drop it in afterwards, and we're just going to change the 1. So we're doing the exact same equation on both the swish 0 value and the swish 1 value. So the the horizontal and the vertical axes. And we're going to apply that to the value of our current transform, which has also got a horizontal and a vertical value. So we'll square bracket and close that off. We'll hit enter, and you can see we're all good. Nothing's really changed because we haven't started fiddling with these settings, but we'll get to that in a sec. Finally, we've got our equation for our swish to point property. So we'll scroll down to that in the effects controls. We're going to hold Alt, click on the stopwatch for the point, and it's going to give us an expression window. It's a little awkward here at the bottom, so we're just going to drag out this expression window so we can see a bit better what we're doing. We're going to clear that, and we're going to start things off with a conditional. And what we're trying to do is establish that out of the two different values that we have for this point, we only really want to grab the max one. We don't want to be moving off in weird angles, so we only want to be looking at, all right, snapping it to one angle that we're going to actually be moving for our transition. Sounds a little bit complicated. Let's just write it anyway. So we're going to write if left parentheses to start our conditional. We'll type the word math.abs, do another parentheses, value 0, so grabbing the first value of our point here. We're going to close that, and we're going to say less than math.abs, value 1, like so. And then we're saying if this is the case, we're going to do something, otherwise we're going to do something else. And we're saying if one of these values is bigger than the other, we're going to only take one of the other, the value of one, and ignore the other, otherwise we'll do the opposite. So we say that by saying var nv, so defining a new variable called nv, and we're going to say equals 0, comma, the value of 1, like so, and we'll select that whole thing, drop it in underneath, but instead we're going to change it to value 0 and 0 like so. So you can see we're grabbing the second value in this first instance and making the other one as 0, and we're grabbing the first horizontal value here, using it here, and saying the second value is 0 like so. Finally, we're going to say toComp left parentheses transform dot anchor point dot time plus nv. And we're going to write that in there because naturally what happens is this swish to point, which we can see if we zero it out, this point here naturally would be just floating around in space if we moved our text layer. But now that we do move our text layer, this final line is actually ensuring that it stays attached to our layer so that wherever it is in our composition, we can always manage this effects chain in order for it to do stuff. And you'll see if I now have that same switch to properties effect selected, I get this little ball that I can drag around, and you can see because of the conditional we've written, it now snaps to one of the axes. It's not floating around in between the two, it's always going to snap to one of these axes. And what this does is this lets us both define the direction and how far our animation's going to go. So for example, we're going to say maybe around there, we'll go to the 0 second mark and we'll start moving our transition slider. And you can see it slides up, it slides down. So going between 0 and 1 is always going to make it go in the direction of our switch to point, like so. And going negative is going to go the same amount in the opposite direction. The advantage of this is, say I go to the 0 point, hit the stopwatch for transition to set a keyframe, we can hit U to quickly bring up where that is. And then moving ahead, we could go to say 1 second, hit a keyframe for that, instead set it to 0. Maybe give a second where our text is available, go forward, set a keyframe, go to 3 seconds, set the keyframe for 1. So now we've got keyframes for going between -1 and 0, stops and 0 and 0 and 1. And you can see that brings our text in and also takes our text out. We can even select these, hit F9, we can do some easing on them, going to the graph editor. If you want to know about easing, I have another video all about easing that you can do to find out all about these. But for now, we're just going to select all these handles and drag them around just so we can demonstrate what that looks like with a bit more animation weight to it. We can even drag that out so we can see it a bit more. And you can see what I can do as well is, say I want to change this up, I want to have it coming from the side, I can easily grab my switch to property now, drag it to the side, and you can see now it's going to come in from the side. One advantage is I can go for when it's at -1, drag us forward until I start seeing the very edge, and then I know that it's on the very edge when it animates in, like so. And you can see it's always going to perfectly show that text as it appears. And I can even put in some other text. It's going to completely adapt and start from that edge, come in. There you go. The animation is still beautiful. I don't need to adjust any masks around that. And I could even change again the direction that that is coming in and out of in order to do that animation. So it's amazing. It works really good like this. And you can see it gives you a lot of versatility. Now, a couple of things, obviously I mentioned at the start, sometimes this bugs out, you get some weird text glitches. You can usually fix that up by changing the font size by even just a pixel. And I've found that by having this second calculations in after the CC composite, it actually helps that stay a bit more stable. So that's how you create this cool animation look with some text coming in, text coming out, and you could layer this, you could change the colors up however you wanted to do it, and use this in a lot of different ways. And the great advantage of this is I can position this anywhere I want on my screen, scale it, and the text animation still gonna add and work nice and smoothly. I don't need to change boxes, and the advantage as well is that it's all on one layer. But for now, that's this text thing. Let me know how you go with it if you have any other ideas on how you could use this, and I'd love to hear your comments down below. Until next time, my name is Bench. Thanks for watching.